This podcast is not affiliated with any Grand Lodge, and the particulars, antics, and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own. Should be dismissed immediately.
All right, welcome to a special recording, the regular release date, but special recording, Sunday afternoon. A little different for us. You'll notice there's no alcoholic beverages in front of us. I don't even know what to do now.
They're bright.
All right, quick do a shout out for our show sponsors. We have Homeward Handyman Services, local here in Omaha. Master Mason does great work. We have the Corporal Dagan Page Foundation. Does great work with veterans and service dogs in our area. MasonGearShop.com. Go to their website, buy our stuff, buy their stuff. If you buy our stuff, a portion comes back to us. And BricksMasons.com. They came across our show and liked what they saw, so they thought they'd throw some money our way, and we're not going to say no. So with that, we will introduce our guest. What happened? Very special guest that we met, or I met.
We all did.
Jason and I met.
Yep.
At Central State Shrine Association in Sioux City. I don't even know how long ago it was, but it was a little bit. So he is a past master of Woodson Lodge, number 121 in Toronto, Kansas. Past Grand Master of Kansas in 1997. Potentate of Meridian Shrine in Wichita in 2004, and past Imperial Potentate July 2019 to 2020. So welcome, Brother Jeff, to our humble show.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
It's you're by far the highest profile guest we've had. I mean, except for Jason was a guest one time before he became a host. That's pretty high profile. Oh, we have to shrink that a little bit, huh? Mm-hmm. All right. So, for those of you listening, this may not sound much different, except we're using a table mic instead of lavalier mics. Mm-hmm. If you're watching, it's interesting because we're on a Google Meets. Mm-hmm. So hopefully the screen switches back and forth like it's supposed to. We'll see.
Yeah.
If not, it'll be just about how our show goes. So let's dive into some questions. So in the first place, we want to tell the story of every Mason. It's kind of the goal of our show. So what brought you to Masonry and what keeps you here?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on your show today. It's a privilege to be with you. And, you know, Toronto, Kansas is a pretty small little town. When I was a kid growing up, it was 450 people. Today, it's about 275. But we've had a Masonic Lodge there for over 150 years. And my dad was a Mason, and about every important man in my community was a Mason in that Masonic Lodge. And you just kind of gravitate toward those people. Mm-hmm. And when I was 19 years old, they had changed the rule recently, the bylaws recently, from 21 to 18 in Kansas. And a friend of ours, a customer of ours actually as well, walked into the feed store where I was working with my parents and kind of slid this Masonic petition in front of me. He said, "Here, you always knew you were going to be a Mason. Get this filled out and let's get started." So that started the journey right there.
Nice. And you've been busy ever since, right?
Just a little bit. I jokingly laugh, but it's true. I got married between my second and third degree. Just kind of the way the calendar fell on a few things. And so they had left the junior steward slot open in my lodge when they installed officers at the December annual meeting. And I became a Master Mason in January. And so they slid me right into the junior steward slot. So I jokingly told my wife here recently, you know, that, well, so she was in her first Masonic line within a month or so after we got married. And basically, I've had her in a line ever since, because we went from the lodge work to the Grand Lodge line, went from the Grand Lodge line to the Shrine line, and I was the personal representative of Scottish Rite in Wichita for 5 years and had her there. And then we got elected to the Imperial line and had her there. So and we're going to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary next weekend. And she's basically been in a line all of those years.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
congrats.
Congratulations.
Condolences to her, but I definitely need to be congratulated.
Do me a quick favor, Jason. Shut that door. Just in case my dogs start barking. Perfect. So we mentioned that we met at CSSA, and you wanted to take that idea back to your temple. Did that ever go back? That idea?
Sure. I told them, of course, a lot of them saw you there. If you remember, you guys with your flying carpet and everything else you had, and all your little chase lounges and everything that you had there, it was brand new. It was very cool. Everybody gravitated towards you guys, if you remember that. And so a lot of the Midian guys had seen you as well. So they haven't started that unit back here yet. I think that's probably more out of respect to you guys than anything else, but it is a very cool unit. And I saw some of your guys at CSSA in Topeka this year as well. So they've continued and you've added to it with some other things in your unit. So it's great. Glad to see something new out there.
Yeah, we do have a couple of things up our sleeve. We're working on there's a covered wagon now, and we're working on a box car.
There you go.
Oh, we have a boat.
The boat, yes. Yeah,
Yep.
because I wasn't there.
We've inherited a couple of the older clowns from the shrine that can't quite walk a whole parade anymore. And one of them is a sailor clown, and he took a little Tykes sandbox, the sailboat sandbox, and we basically mounted that on a scooter base, and he drives his boat around in the parades. So that one's a lot of fun. But what do you got? You want to take the next one?
Yeah. Let's see. What were some of the most memorable moments during your time as Imperial Potentate?
Well, there's a lot of things that come to mind when you talk about memorable moments. Certainly the installation in Nashville was something that you never forget. Lots of family, lots of friends, Midian Shriners and their ladies that had come for that. And then just Shriners and ladies from temples all over the world that, we got to know over the 10, 11 years coming up the line. And then to have that happen in front of all that friends, family, and Shriner friends and family, so to speak, was extremely special. And then seeing my wife roll out her Women in Philanthropy program that she had worked on for 3 long years, getting it ready to go. That was a real significant part of that installation as well, and certainly a very memorable part of that. Going on into the year, laying the wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. That's all made possible by the International Association of the Legion of Honor. That is a very solemn, meaningful event. It'll make the hair stand up on the back of your neck, I can tell you that. And it was a very, very special day to do that. Of course, traveling and meeting people, we went to the Philippines. We'd been there once before, went back as Imperial Potentate, and that's a very different world in Shrindom over there. It is very upscale back there. It's probably more like what our fraternity was like 50 to 70 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so it's very different, but they're so proud to be a Mason, be a Shriner over there. Obviously went to Panama, where we met a lot of special friends down there and spent some time down there doing a clinic, a hospital clinic while we were down there, and then starting the Latin American Shrine Association while we were there. And then, the day that you probably never forget we'll never forget is March the 12th of 2020. And we were actually in Tampa at Royal Guidance just for band schools. And the plan was to fly home the next day and spend one day at home and wash your clothes and get back on an airplane the following day. And that was the day the world came to an end. Not but came to a stop because of COVID. Yeah. And we never left home again after that. And so that's certainly something that's memorable. And then one of the things that is memorable for the wrong reason is not getting to have the 2020 Imperial Session in Kansas City. So many people had worked so hard for 5 years to have a session that really would have been so different in a lot of ways. We had a lot of very unique things planned. And to see all of those labors not come to fruition was really saddening for Cheryl and I. They never got rewarded for the efforts that they'd done over those 5 years. And to my team of 4 guys, 2 or 3 or 4 guys that had been my director general, Ogden, and my deputy director generals, Nick Baldy and Chris Murrow, you know, it was actually more work to get out of the session than it was if we had just went ahead and had the session, because there were contracts to be gotten out of, and so many things. It was a sad deal. It wasn't just for us. It was just for everybody that was involved that we didn't get to have the session.
Yeah, my wife's she's figuring out how much work is going in just to kind of setting things up for installation here in a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
As your wife knows, right, Julie? You just did that last year and a couple years ago.
Probably, yep.
Yeah, Heath and I are moving up. Jason's a past master of our lodge, and I'll be master. I was just voted Thursday night to be master of our lodge, and then he's right behind me in senior warden. So we're going to have some fun.
Well, congratulations to both of you. Matter of fact, all 3 of you. But you two, you know, having a father and son in the east, in the west at the same time, it's got to be pretty special.
Yeah, and actually, Jason's son is master right now.
No, shoot, that's really good.
Yes. I'm looking forward to it with you guys. I think it's gonna be great. So
yeah.
Well, I just hope you've got a good secretary of your lodge, because he's always key to making all that happen. I was secretary of my lodge for about 20 years, and then we've got a really good secretary now, and they're key to having good continuity as you move along and to make sure everything kind of keeps on a regular pace.
Well, our secretary drives a crib, so
yeah, I don't know if he got to see the crib, because I think
he saw it in Topeka.
Oh, did he?
Yep.
Okay, I didn't know if he had it then. I thought it was still his chair, but
yeah. What do you think, Jason? You want to take the next one?
yeah, absolutely.
So
Can you read it?
It's number 4. You want me to make it bigger?
No, nice.
Okay. All right.
What do you believe to be the most important qualities of an effective leader within the fraternity?
Well, you know, leaders come in all shapes and sizes and abilities and etc. But I think commitment is probably what makes a leader stand out. Not everyone is blessed with the same abilities to be a leader. But I've always said the real difference between being a good leader and a really good leader is preparation. And you need to plan and prepare. And that takes commitment. You just can't walk into a meeting, you know, and expect it to happen. You have to know that it's happened by being prepared. And whether that's your ritualistic work or just carrying out a regular stage meeting, it's about getting the most out of everyone around you that you serve with. And, you know, like I said, some leaders are better than others, but I've always admired the one that gets the most out of his ability, even though he may not be as good as what some others actually are that don't prepare. But when I taught Orlando Guidance Assistant Divan School for years and years and years, we talked about Divan planning. I told myself, I don't care if you take a big cheap tablet and number 2 pencil, or you take a computer or something in between, but sit down at a designated time every week. My time is Sunday mornings, and I get up early and I prepare for the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of what's going to take place. And you have to write things down and get things put together. You can think about them all you want in your head, but in the end, putting something down somewhere, for me at least, proves to be helps me a lot as I move forward, even today in what I do. So commitment to the time involved is something that I think distinguishes a good leader from a great leader.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, if you don't prepare, you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants. And I mean, it works okay for some people for a while, but usually not very long.
Exactly right.
So we talked earlier about the most memorable moments. What was some of the stuff that presented challenges to you?
Well, I think no matter whether you're the master of your lodge, or whether you're the potentate of your shrine temple, or whether you're the Imperial Potentate, there's challenges that come in front of you today. And I always said I never had a problem. I just had a challenge that I had to figure out how we were going to overcome. And I was privileged to work with an incredible bunch of men that made up our joint boards, the Imperial Divan and the trustees. And Jerry Gant, who preceded me as Imperial Potentate 4 years prior to me, he was chairman of the trustees, and we became friends almost as soon as I got on the joint board, because I really didn't know Jerry before that. But he was a really good Imperial Potentate, and then became a really good chairman of the board of trustees, and just stepped down at this past year's Imperial session. And Jerry and I, we didn't necessarily agree on everything. Matter of fact, we had some pretty significant disagreements from time to time, but was always able to work out those differences, and you make those big challenges few and far between when you're at a level and you can sit down as men and as Masons and as Shriners and discuss really what's going on. So at the joint board level, there's always those challenges, but we always was able to work through that. On a temple level, and you can't believe how much time the Imperial Potentate spends on temple business. The petty bickering that sometimes takes place at a temple, and then pretty soon it spills over to the rest of the nobility in the temple, and then eventually the Imperial Potentate gets involved. And you have to be a pretty skilled parliamentarian. You have to be kind of a shrewd negotiator at times. And above all, I always thought you had to be compassionate, but yet firm when you try to settle those differences. And if you can get that done to the betterment of everybody in the temple itself, then you've been pretty successful with that. And then obviously the biggest, And then obviously the biggest challenge we had was COVID. It's something that we've never ever experienced, something that truly changed the world for nearly a year. And it was not a huge challenge to all of us individuals, but also to our hospital system, because we had to continue to treat patients and figuring out how we were going to do that. And then making sure we took care of those kids through COVID. And then you get into the Imperial session that I just mentioned earlier we never had, and we didn't have it in city as such, but we had to have some kind of a virtual type session to carry out just 5 or 6 pieces of business that I felt was very important. And here was one of those things that, it was March when the COVID hit, and then by April we pretty well figured out we weren't going to have a session in Kansas City. And then I was adamant that we were going to have a session at least enough to elect some officers and carry out a few important pieces of business. And we did that in Tampa. There was very few of us in the room, but we was able to get that done. And for the betterment of our fraternity and the betterment of our school system, we got it done in full public view, just like we're doing today, virtually, and was able to conduct the business that we needed to do. But it was a huge challenge because we never had to do that before.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see. If you could go back in time, what? You're looking at like that for. If you could go back in time, is there anything you would change about your time in the big chair or about the fraternity?
Well, probably nothing of any consequence. But we talked about preparation earlier, and I always felt like I was extremely well prepared for every day. I'm constantly prepared in advance for the next big event. And I also tried to surround myself with men that I could call upon to give me some good and timely counsel every once in a while when you might need it. But I really never felt like there was anything I couldn't handle. I never had a big problem. I had some big challenges, but not a big problem. And I think that if you attack every day and you're prepared, and that happens not by chance, as you guys all know. You have to work in advance, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out, to know what's coming at you to be ready. So there's not much I would change. I mean, you can't really change a lot of it anyway, and you just move forward. And we lost an Imperial officer that year, the resignation, right after I became the Imperial Potentate, and I stood pretty firm in that stance and was glad I did that. And that's something that hadn't happened in a long time either. So Lots of things went down, but wouldn't change a thing, I don't think.
Yeah, I think going back to you're talking about difficulties at the temple level, we've had a little bit of that. I'm not sure it happens everywhere, but sometimes I think you just need to remind these guys that we're Masons and we should act as such. You know, I think a little bit of that gets lost. We have guys here. Omaha's very shrine heavy, and it does seem like there are a fair amount of guys that they get into the shrine and you never see them again. You know, like we're all shrine too.
Joe, I think that's a pretty common thing. But you looked at a Masonic lodge, you look at your shrine temple, and then look at the real active numbers. You're probably looking at 15, 20% active, no matter what organization it is that you're looking at. And thank goodness we have that other 80% that do nothing but pay their dues, because obviously we need the financial support.
Yeah.
Most of those guys, or a lot of those guys anyway, they support us in our fundraising efforts, buying tickets to this and tickets to that and everything else that we do. But there's also a great majority of those guys out there that they will come and do a job if you ask them to do that. And that's significant. So to your point, you're right. A lot of guys that take you and you never see, you don't think you ever see them again, but I can guarantee you the great majority of those guys, if you ask them to do something particular, they jump right in with both feet.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know, to your point, Joe, when I was master of my lodge the first time, I put upon myself for every meeting that we had, I called a Mason in my lodge that I had not seen in lodge maybe in a year or 2, 3, 4, sometimes 10 years. And I called them and asked them to do one of two things: either to greet everybody at the door, to arrive a little early, greet everybody at the door when they came in, or to help me clean up the kitchen when we were done with refreshments that night. And you know, I never, ever had somebody turn me down. They might say, well, I can't come next Monday, but I could come in 2 weeks, or I could come 2 weeks after that. How about I help you then? So I think a lot of these people are just looking for a reason to come, and we just need to give them that reason by asking them to do something.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, we've talked about that before too. It's like maybe some of the older guys at some point in their career didn't feel like they were as welcome at lodge as they thought they should be. And I think it's up to us newer Masons to, I say newer, but you know, the guys that have been in 20, 30 years, maybe they're longing to come back and they just don't feel comfortable. So I think
well, let me talk about that a little bit too. So probably the second time I was master of my lodge, we had a guy that was way older than I was. He was probably 30, 40 years older than I was at the time. And he would only come to lodge a couple times a year, but he always came in 15 minutes late. We'd already be open, and there'd be a knock at the door of the Tyler, and he'd say, you know, so-and-so is at the door. He's properly clad and vouched for and desires admittance. And, you know, we'd always open the door and let him in, and he'd go to the altar and do a little salute and go sit down. My lodge at that time, in the dead of summer, we instead of opening at 7:30, we opened at 8 o'clock. And one night we're there and we hadn't switched back to the 7:30 time frame yet. And this brother came that night, and it was about 7:45 when he walked in, and he expected the lodge to be already open and going. And all of a sudden, we're all still standing out there, kind of drinking some coffee and doing things before lodge. And I immediately saw fear in his eyes, and I immediately realized that he had probably forgot the pass to get in the lodge. That's why he came late. So I go to my two deacons and I huddle them up real quick as we were getting ready to open lodge. I said, okay, when you get this, brother, instead of you going in and collecting the pass, you go in and you give him the pass very quietly, very discreetly, whisper it in his ear. We all knew he was there. He'd been a member there almost 50 years at that time. It wasn't a question that he was a calendar eavesdropper. He belonged to us. And so they did that. And, you know, he was never late to lodge yet.
That's perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, you know, sometimes you just got to remember that we have some older brothers that haven't done the rusty nail degree or something like that, like we've all seen sometimes in some of our lodges, etc. But they need a little reminder every once in a while because their memory has failed them, and we need to be able to help them.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think we're going to take a quick break real quick, and we'll play a couple commercials for everybody, just so they're probably tired of us anyways. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
At Homeward Handyman Services, we pride ourselves on being honest and giving every job the attention it deserves. Owned and operated by a master mason with 2 decades of expertise in home repair. We are bonded and insured, and we carry the highest standards when it comes to taking care of your home. Whether you need a faucet changed or a light remodel, we can take care of your home improvement needs. Call Michael at 402-915-0824 today for a free estimate.
And we're back.
Like that.
Our professional clacker. So I asked you a question earlier, and I didn't give you enough time to answer it all the way, but what keeps you in Masonry?
What keeps me in Masonry? Well, Joe, I tell you, I'm always a big believer that everyone needs to belong to something bigger than they are. That allows you to do things together that you wouldn't be able to accomplish by yourself. And at the lodge level, I had the honor and privilege of being president of the Kansas Masonic Foundation, which is the charitable arm of Kansas Freemasonry. I served on that board for about 25 years. I think I was president for about 10 of it, maybe, when I was on there. And our Kansas Masonic Foundation does a lot of great things. First off, they've given over $10 million in scholarships. It's Kansas money that goes to Kansas kids, goes to Kansas colleges, universities, and trade schools. And it does a great job with that. The second thing is we've given over $30 million to Kansas University's cancer endeavor in Kansas City. And I happened to be the president when this all kind of took place. And we did an initial, we spent about 20 years giving $5 million. And I had just become president. And I get a call from the vice chancellor at KU saying, "Hey, next time you're in Kansas City, I want you to come up and talk to me." And I told her, I said, "Well, I've never come to Kansas City much, but so let's just make an appointment. I'll come see you." So I did, and she proceeded to tell me that Kansas University was going to make this big push with their cancer program to try to get NCI, or National Cancer Institute, designated. And they need to show they had support from everywhere. And she pointed out that the Masons of Kansas were the longest continuous givers towards their cancer program. And we'd only given $5 million over 20 years or so, but every year we gave a gift. And she says, "So I'd like for you to commit to me that you're going to give us another $15 million and do it in the next 4 years." And I kind of looked at her and said, "What'd you say?" And she said, "Well, I need $15 million more in 4 years." So we talked a little bit. And I said, "Tell you what I'll do. I'll go back to the board." So I had a board of about 25 Masons, and I kind of thought about this a little bit, and I went back and I convinced them that we needed to do this for the benefit of Kansas Masonry that would put us on the map. And so we did. And in the next 3.5 years, we raised $15 million more to do that.
Nice.
And so since then, we've given over another 10 toward this. And as a result of that, we have the Kansas Masonic Cancer Research Institute in Kansas City, which is the research part of KU Med for cancer. We have the Masonic Cancer Alliance, which is a partnership that KU has, because one of the essential components of what we agreed with them on when we agreed to give them the $15 million is it couldn't all be Kansas City, because obviously that's the far northeast part of Kansas. It had to be something that stretched all across our state. And so the Masonic Cancer Alliance allows hospitals across the state of Kansas to partner with KU in their cancer program. You may have to go to Kansas City to see the very best of the best doctors to get your diagnosis and a treatment program and all this, but then you will be able to take your treatment at a hospital close to you. Mm-hmm. That was very important to us. So between the care, the research, the support, the outreach that we have with KU, that's something that nobody can accomplish on their own. Here again, all of us working together. And today, they are even beyond that. They are now a comprehensive National Cancer Institute designated facility, which means they're one of the best 30, 40 in the whole country. MD Anderson, Mayo Clinic, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll just kind of add another little story to this. So after we'd committed to raising the $15 million, I get a second call from her. And she goes, I need you back in Kansas City. I said, holy crud. I said, that's kind of a hard deal. Just don't come there. But what do you need? Well, she says, we're trying to find somebody to guide us in this effort to be NCI designated. And we've identified a doctor. And he's from Gardner, Kansas, right up by Kansas City. He went to Chanute Community College. Then he went to Pittsburgh State University, which is in the southeast corner of Kansas, to get his 4-year degree. But now he's in Vanderbilt University. And he's been there, and he's a doctor, and he's a leading researcher there, and the whole bit. And we believe this is a guy that we want to come back and lead us in this journey. And I said, okay, so why does that involve me? She says, because he is a Kansas Mason.
Hell yeah.
I said, you're kidding me. No. So his name's Dr. Roy Jensen. And when she mentioned that, I knew Roy's dad. I knew his brother. I knew his uncle, because I'd been in Gardner Masonic Lodge several times. But I never knew Roy, because he's one of these guys at 21. He got his Masonic degrees. When he was in college, just kept moving on to Vanderbilt University. He was never home, never in lodge, never able to be active.
Yeah.
So they brought Roy back to KU for what I call a scouting trip, recruiting trip. And myself and 2 or 3 of our board members were in a conference room in a certain building on the floor at a certain time. And as they were walking him around campus, they just brought him right in. And she opened the door and introduced us to him. And he sat down, and we told him our commitment as Kansas Masons to KU and to cancer. And the fact that he was a Mason made it even extra special to us, and that we were committed to help him at any time he needed that going forward. And while I'm sure that I wasn't the first person to know when Roy accepted that challenge, I'm sure KU probably knew before I did, but I was one of the first 4 or 5 that he called and told me that he was coming back to Kansas to do this. And I can't have enough good things to say about Dr. Jensen. I just had lunch with him about a month ago now, and I'm going to chair a $2 million fundraising thing, and we're going to endow a professorship in his name there, because he's probably going to retire in 5 or 6 years. And it's just incredible what he's got done. So that's my story with the Kansas Masonic Foundation. And then Shriners Hospitals for Children. What keeps me going? What keeps all of us Shriners going? Over 1.5 million children we treated. We spent $35 a second, over $3 million a day, every day, to give kids the care they need and make their life what it wouldn't be otherwise. It's a tremendous charity. When they call it the world's greatest philanthropy, I almost tend to believe that.
Yeah.
And probably more than anything else, what keeps me going is just the people Cheryl and I have had the privilege and honor to meet along the journey. I mean, wonderful people. I would have never known any of you guys had it not been for this. And the people that we know, not only coast to coast, but around the world, is just incredible.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us to your topic that you wanted to cover is you want to make sure, I don't want to say necessarily that we guard the West Gate all the time, but make sure we're bringing good guys in, right?
Sure. And I think, membership is something that we all need to take responsibility for our future. For over 50 years now, we've lost members each and every year in our fraternity, every year, as a whole. And I just don't think that each and every person individually puts enough commitment in the membership. We have to be able to identify good men, good moral character, who would make good Masons, and invite them to become a member of our lodge. Or at least, if you can't invite them, as a few states can't, but most of them can today, you have to at least present the information in front of them to let them make a good informed decision about becoming a member. And then as far as the shrine goes, we got to go find those good Masons and find guys that want to be Shriners and invite them to become a Shrine Mason. And whether we're a Mason only, or whether we're a Shriner or a Scottish, acting the Scottish Rite, the York Rite, whatever that is, we have a great story to tell. We have a long history from the very beginning of this country of service to mankind and humanity. I mean, we started the first public school system. Benjamin Franklin did back in Philadelphia. A large number of the signers of Declaration of Independence were Masons. George Washington, the father of our country, was a Mason. And so on the Masonic fraternity, we have such a rich history.
Yeah.
As Shriners, we own the world's greatest philanthropy, Shriners Hospitals for Children. And like I said, we spend $35 a second to be able to take care of kids. And what a great story that is to tell anyone. And I find it hard to believe that if we're able to tell that story, that people wouldn't want to become one of what we are. But I also want to tell you that I was obviously Grand Master in 1997. That's been a long time ago. And times have changed. And I don't know that we have changed with those. It isn't about bringing in a lesser person. That is a responsibility that you and I and every one of us have when we look to bring someone into our lodge. But I do think that with the way today's world is, we have to make those efforts somewhat easier. To borrow a phrase from past Grandmaster Tim Whelan of Ohio, we are in a race to zero if we don't teach. And we can't let that happen. We have to have one-day classes, chance to advance classes, things like that, where we can bring men in with a lesser requirement than what most of our Grand Lodges still have today. And if you look at the facts and the figures from the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, the Grand Lodge of Ohio, the Grand Lodge of Kansas, where we've had one-day classes in the past, the amount of men that stay, that become officers in your lodge, that become ritualists in your lodge, are exactly the same as they are the men that we take in 1 degree at a time.
Yeah.
The figures are the same. The difference is, instead of taking in 3 or 4 maybe in your lodge in a year, you might be able to get 10 or 12 in your lodge in that year if we figure out a way to get them in a little easier. And your chances, the ritualistic part of our lodges only appeal to 5 to 8% of the men that we take in. 5 to 8%. And if you take in 10 guys, your chances of getting 1 or 2 or 3 of them is a lot better than if you only take in 2 guys. Right. So we got to figure out how we do that. And every one of us has to take that responsibility upon ourselves. And if we do that, then we will be more successful going forward. We have to change, modernize our methods of what we do. And I think if you do a one-day class, you can do a degree, you can do some Masonic education between the degrees. And I'm not going to put any of you guys on the spot, but when I took my degrees 50 years ago, I took them one degree at a time. Back then it was full catechism. You did the whole thing up in front of the lodge.
Yep.
Yet I don't know how much I really learned at that to start with. I learned more once I got involved in the lodge, got involved in the degree work, etc. But if I'd had some Masonic education between my degrees, an hour or so, I'd have been a lot smarter about what was happening. So we got to figure out how we do that, and so they have true meaning of what those degrees are all about. And I think if we do that, we'll be a lot better off, and membership will be the key going forward. Because if we don't do that, we will be at rank 0.
Yeah. And that's always a topic, especially as Grand Lodge gets closer and closer. And you hear a lot of guys say, oh, they don't get anything out of short form or the 1 days. But the guys that are saying this are the guys that went in short form, or warm 1 days, and they think they missed something. You didn't miss anything. You missed trying to memorize, 6,000 words. And driving yourself crazy for 2 or 3 months trying to figure it out, and then getting embarrassed when you can't remember it all when you stand up in front of your peers. Jason and I came in short form, which was basically just the Q&A. And he came in long form and did really well, but he was 18 years old when he did it. It was just a little bit easier, maybe.
No, it isn't. It's a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. His dad helped him study a lot too. You're welcome.
You did. A lot.
Well, I think everybody's a little different. Everybody has different abilities. We talked about that a lot, but there's guys that are very interested in this fraternity that we never have been great members and past masters and etc. that we never would have got into the fraternity if we had made them all go through the long form. But once we got them in through a reduced proficiency of some kind, and they saw what we were really all about, then their interest really sparked, and they were able to do some amazing things after that.
Well, we just had 2 guys proof Thursday night, one for Fellowcraft and one for Entered Apprentice. And the guy that did Fellowcraft, he was verbatim. He got the Grand Lodge Grandmaster's Challenge coin. And the other guy for EA, he's got a busy life, and he got it. What about the first third of it? He got
I'd say a little more than that.
Maybe closer to half, but it was almost up to the obligation. And then I ended up sitting as master because our master was sick, but everybody looked at me and says, well, do you think that's good enough? And I said, I think this man can Mason just as hard as the rest of us. Whether he can remember all these words or not, I know his character. I know what kind of man he is, and he's no less a man than the rest of us sitting in this room. So yeah, he did good enough. He explained the obligation. He explained the working tools. He knows what's going on. He just couldn't memorize the words.
Yep. Good for you for doing that, because it is. I always said don't forget it's proficient and not perfection that we're looking for when these guys come through. Going back to the 1-day classes or chance to advance classes, another significant thing, and this is nothing aimed at any lodge, but we know that Masonic lodges all across Nebraska, all across Kansas, some of them have better ability to do the degrees than others. And when you go into a statewide 1-day class, chance to advance class, etc., what do you have there? You got the very best ritualists around to do that. You have electricity in the building that is between the people. You've got a full house. You don't have 10, 12 guys and one candidate. You've got, 50, 60, 80, 100 candidates and everybody with them and the whole bit. And there's that electricity that's something important is going on there. And I think there's something very significant about that to those people that are taking their degrees.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, I think that about wraps up our questions, right? I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything for our new segment?
I don't.
You do? I do. So we started this new segment because Heath found something ridiculous about the fraternity on TikTok or something about misconceptions of the craft. So I would like to just publicly say right now that we became 32nd degree Masons a couple weeks ago, and it is definitely not the inner circle of Masonry.
Oh, yeah.
We're
You haven't been elevated up into the cloud and given all the secret stuff since.
right. I was 100% expecting that.
Yeah. You know,
So we like to end the show with answers from our questions on YouTube and stuff, and then comments. I don't think we have any questions this time for comments, but Jeff, who would you like to give a shout out to?
Well, I just like to give a shout out to every brother Mason out there today and say, hey guys, look, let's all get in this together. Let's take membership a little more serious. Let's see if we can't turn this effort around. I've been a membership guy my whole life. I'm state membership chairman for Grand Lodge, Kansas. I got involved in the shrine with membership years and years ago, except I should have been fired a long time ago because obviously I haven't done my job. But I just think that we just have to be more serious about what we're doing. And who knows better and who tells the story better than somebody like each of you three guys that are intricately involved in your lodge and other appendant bodies that can tell the story better than anybody. So I'm going to challenge to each one of you three is to top line somebody into your Masonic lodge in 2025. Bring that next guy.
That's a guarantee. I think we brought 5 guys in this year.
Good for you.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Jason, what's your shout out, bud?
My shout out is just going to be to the brothers at Beehive Lodge. It's going to be, someone's sick, something happens. All the brothers always come together as they should to make the ball roll.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing on how well our lodge works. And I'm just honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, we're a small group, but we're effective.
Right.
Yeah. What about you?
I'm gonna give my shout out to all the people that put on the degrees at the Scottish Rite.
Oh yeah, fantastic work. I think they have about 200 guys. I think closer to 300 by the time you figure the guys that clean and cook and the wardrobe and all that stuff. Yeah, that's a good one. My shout out is to Dave, who's not here because he's not feeling well. So my shout out is to you, Dave, for staying home and not getting me sick. And he's actually, we were going to do a degree Thursday, but he's going to be out of town trying to get his union guys some more money or something like that. He's going to be out of town. Let's see, what do we have after that?
Hey, Joe, before we leave, what about if I give a shout out to all the Tangier Shriners right there in your hometown?
Absolutely. I love it, brother.
Those guys are the best ever. Frankie Krupa, this is for you, buddy. Frankie and I go way back. He was potentate in 1997 at Omaha. There at Tangiers, and I was Grand Master. We didn't know each other at the time, but since then, and then Bob Moline was my counterpart in 2004 up there, and Bob and I still talk almost every month. He's a close personal friend, but Tangiers has had a great reputation, and what a wonderful job the city of Omaha does supporting Tangier Shriners. From your spaghetti feed to everything else that goes on up there, the people that go through that drive-through and pick that up and take it home to eat, you guys are very fortunate up there. The Tangier Shriners are. They have the support from the community they do. So I'll just give another shout out to the Tangier Shriners.
There you have it, my brothers at Tangier. We do. We have a pretty special group there as well, and a great building. But, all right, with that, you wanna cut us?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Until next time, my brothers. Travel well. Cut.